4 fake cops stormed my land, stapling fake eviction notices, seizing my goats, and one even tased my scarecrow like it was a threat. Then Karen rolled up in a black SUV, yelling through a bullhorn that my farm was now HOA property. I stayed quiet, watching from the shadows, waiting. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The breeze that brushed through the dry cedar and rustled the tall fescue couldn't cool the fire rising in my chest. I stepped out of the truck, slow, careful, boots crunching the gravel like distant thunder. Every instinct screamed at me. This wasn't just trespassing. This was a show of force, a message, and I knew exactly who had sent it. The trucks weren't county issued. No markings, no unit numbers, just matte black paint and tinted windows. One of them had mud-caked tires, like they'd been off-roading through someone else's land to get here. The uniforms looked official enough at a glance, navy blues with shiny pins and cheap radios clipped to their shoulders. But up close, they unraveled like a dollar store disguise. No nameplates, no service numbers. One guy had a badge stitched on crooked. Another wore combat boots so new they still had tags under the laces. Real cops don't look like that. Real cops don't act like that. They were scattered across my property like they'd claimed it, pacing around the tool shed, inspecting the chicken coop, one idiot trying to secure my root cellar with zip ties. The one on my porch, barking orders into his radio, had the kind of energy that made my skin crawl, swagger without authority. A man playing dress-up in a costume he didn't earn. And it was my porch. The wood I'd cut, sanded and nailed with my own 2 hands after a winter storm took the last one. Now he was stomping all over it like it belonged to him. That's when the clipboard caught my eye. Standard HOA issue, the kind Karen always clutched like a holy text. Neatly labeled sections for infractions, escalations, and penalties. Only this time, the punishment wasn't just a fine, it was occupation. A deep, slow breath filled my lungs. 2 weeks ago, I'd laughed off their threat about unauthorized cultivation. I grow heirloom corn and keep bees. Nothing illegal, nothing they can touch. But my land edges their pristine subdivision like a scar across a mannequin. They want uniform lawns and color-matched shutters. I have goats. That alone makes me a threat to their illusion of order. And Karen, she's always hated that I exist just outside her reach, that she can't leash me like the rest of her community. But now, while I was out feeding homeless vets, she made her move. That was her mistake. Thinking I wouldn't notice, thinking I wouldn't fight back. She sent wolves in sheep's clothing. What she didn't know was that I was already a shepherd with a loaded rifle, and I'd been watching. Travis didn't hesitate. The moment I laid out the situation, uniformed imposters, seizures, phony citations, his tone dropped low and tight. That's impersonation, man. Felony level stupid. He didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't need to. We'd served together in the reserves, cleared buildings in training scenarios hot enough to melt your trigger finger. Trust wasn't a question between us, but this wasn't a raid. Not yet. I didn't want chaos. I wanted evidence. Ironclad, time-stamped, admissible. My place is wired tighter than Fort Knox. Motion detectors at the tree line, thermal sensors in the back pasture, 12 smart cameras with cloud backups. I'd even rigged 2 short-range drones with night vision just in case. Most folks keep dogs. I keep surveillance. From the old feed room, tucked beneath the hayloft behind a false wall, I watched them like a hunter watches poachers. The screens flickered in grayscale and color, day and night views split across a dozen angles, and what I saw turned my stomach. These HOA cowboys weren't just overstepping, they were making a spectacle. One slapped, eviction, in violation of Municipal Code 7-24 across my barn door. The code didn't exist. I checked. Twice. Another strutted into the paddock like he'd been deputized by God himself and started tagging my goats with duct tape. Said they were being seized as evidence of non-compliance. My Nubians, gentle as lambs, confused, terrified. One even tripped trying to dodge a net. And then, because theater is never complete without absurdity, one of them spotted my old scarecrow out in the corn rows, built from an old camo jacket, ski mask, and a reflective vest for visibility. He drew a taser and fired, dead center. The scarecrow shuddered, collapsed in a puff of straw, and the guy raised his arms like he'd taken down a fugitive. I nearly cracked my screen in half. Then she came. Karen's SUV nosed onto the gravel like it belonged in a parade. Glossy, obnoxious, personalized plate that read HOA Queen. She climbed out in pressed slacks and a windbreaker embroidered with the association's logo. The clipboard was back. So was the bullhorn. Her voice, shrill and theatrical, echoed across the yard as she declared the land non-compliant and reclaimed under emergency clause authority. My land, my barn, my livestock. She stood on soil I inherited from my grandfather and declared it conquered like some colonial bureaucrat. But I let her speak, let her broadcast, let her believe, for one last day, that she was untouchable. Because in truth, she'd already walked into the snare, and every camera saw it, every word, every step. The hum of the engines was barely audible. 3 black SUVs gliding across the gravel like vultures circling low, their approach calm, measured, inevitable. No sirens, no lights, just presence. The kind that makes your breath hitch and your conscience tremble if you've got anything to hide. And Karen? She had plenty. The doors cracked open in perfect sync, boots hitting dirt with deliberate weight. First came Travis, stone-faced and silent, his badge gleaming like a verdict. Then the county sheriff, broad-chested and grave, followed by a no-nonsense woman from the state attorney general's office, holding a thick manila folder. My footage, labeled and time-stamped. Karen stood with her back to them, still preaching into her bullhorn about community sovereignty and violations of neighborhood ordinances, as if she were rallying troops at a county fair instead of staging a felony-level stunt. The words were still hanging in the air when the first agent stepped forward, firm but calm. "Ma'am," he said, voice flat as a gavel, "you and your associates are under investigation for criminal impersonation of law enforcement, trespassing, unlawful seizure of livestock, and attempted fraud." Karen blinked again, and let out a bark of a laugh, high-pitched, forced, derisive. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, lips curling. "I am the law here. This is our jurisdiction." The agent didn't flinch. He began reading her rights. That's when her expression cracked. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. The way he read them, not like a threat, but like a sentence already passed. Her laughter died in her throat. She turned, mouth half open, looking not like a queen stripped of her crown, but a petty tyrant finally realizing the throne was made of cardboard. Then came the unraveling. One of her officers, the skinny one with the mirrored sunglasses and fake baton, took off toward the driveway in a dead sprint. He didn't make it 3 feet before a deputy leveled him into the gravel with a practiced shoulder hit. Another, a pale young man who'd spent most of the morning inventorying my goats, broke down sobbing, repeating, "She said it was legal," over and over like a confession in a nightmare. It was clinical, efficient, no yelling, no scuffles, just the quiet mechanics of justice folding in around them like steel jaws. And me? I didn't move from the porch. I just stood there, arms folded, my dogs at my sides, the morning sun climbing behind me like a spotlight. That porch, the one Karen once threatened to fine me over, called non-compliant architecture, had never felt more righteous. I didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't gloat. Truth is, I didn't have to. The land did it for me. Karen came at me with a lawsuit so bloated with nonsense it read like bad fiction. She claimed emotional distress, defamation, and, most audacious of all, that I had orchestrated a conspiracy to entrap a community leader. Her words. Like she was some noble figure brought down by palace intrigue. In reality, she'd gotten caught red-handed, dressed up her delusion in polyester uniforms, and marched onto private land with a clipboard and a god complex. The judge didn't even let the case reach discovery, laughed it out of court in under 20 minutes. "Ms. Strickland," he said dryly, "your argument hinges on the legality of pretending to be a police officer. That's not a loophole, that's a felony." From there, it all crumbled. The HOA board held one emergency meeting, then another, and then radio silence. Within 4 weeks, the entire structure was dissolved under pressure from the state. Turns out, once people started sniffing around Karen's leadership history, things unraveled fast. Backroom budget approvals, unauthorized fines, missing funds labeled as landscape initiatives. The whole operation was rotten to its decorative core. State oversight stepped in like a wrecking crew, quiet, methodical, absolute. New guidelines, mandatory audits, a complete overhaul of neighborhood governance. And the residents? They didn't fight it. They were too busy breathing again. Turns out living under Karen's reign was like walking barefoot through a minefield of HOA bylaws. One false move and boom. $150 for a non-regulation mailbox or a pink warning tag for excessive flag display. As for Karen herself, the mighty fell hard. The HOA queen now clocks in at the front desk of a storage facility that smells like mildew and forgotten Christmas decorations. I heard she wears a name tag that says K. Strickland and flinches every time someone pulls out a clipboard. But the part that sticks with me, that really roots deep, is what happened after. Quiet knocks on my door, handwritten notes left in my mailbox. People who once crossed the street to avoid trouble now standing on my porch with casseroles, handshakes, and words they couldn't say for years. "You saved the whole damn street," one of them told me, choking on emotion he didn't expect. "We were all too scared to push back. But you..." Truth is, I never planned to be anyone's liberator. I just wanted peace, a quiet patch of land and the freedom to live how I see fit. But sometimes, when fake authority marches across your line, someone's got to show them what a real boundary feels like, and it helps when you've already laid the tripwire.